for those who agree with us, but freedom of thought for the thoughts we hate. So said Justice Oliver Wendell of the US Supreme Court. Of course, there are limits to freedom of expression, even in a libertarian democracy, where statements will cause real harm. But if we fear all outrageous statements, if we fear a swell of support for unpopular views, if we fear challenge, we will not only stifle free thought, we will stifle independence and liberty. We will lose the opportunity to rebut, exposed to argument, analysis, and scrutiny. And we will lose the opportunity to win over those who may have listened and silently supported and agreed. Limiting free speech does not always quash unwelcome beliefs. France has more laws restricting free speech than any other Western democracy. It also has Europe's largest far-right party. In 2009, Nick Griffin appeared on Question Time, watched by 8 million people. At the time, the BNP polled 6.26% of the national vote. But in the first general election after that, not only did they fail to win a seat, but they fragmented in the polls. And last week it was announced by the Electoral Commission that the BNP had been stripped of its status as an official political party. Let me just finish the point. The New Statesman referred to the poor performance on Question Time as a factor in eroding Nick Griffin's popularity and the support of the BNP. To persuade those who may share the beliefs of the speaker, we need to do more than silence them. We need to address the real grievances of those who may support them. We need to listen, we need to take note, and then we need to respond. I will give way.
Tulip Siddiq.
I thank the Honourable Member and my constituent for giving way. Does the Honourable Lady know that after Nick Griffin appeared on Question Time, in the 24 hours after he appeared, 3,000 people joined the BNP immediately after he had a platform?
It's important to have free speech and so that we have debate. So Nick Griffin's discussion at Question Time will have evoked a number of responses. Of course there will be people, when there is an advocate for something, of course there will always be people who follow them, and that may be a small minority. But what we need to do is put those voices out there in order to slam them down. And that ultimately is what has happened to the BNP. Donald Trump's statement that all Muslims should be banned from the US wrongly categorizes an entire religion with a few extremists. His statements should be exposed as such. Now is not the time to ban him. Now is the time to say very clearly that extremist Islamists are wrong and must be rooted out and stopped. Now is the time to say that the Muslim community is not Daesh. Now is the time to say that Muslims have given us such things as algebra and transformed the study of light and optics. These discoveries have founded one of the bases for our modern technologies. But the other real difficulty is that Donald Trump is a presidential candidate. If we ban the leader of every country who made offensive, inappropriate, or inflammatory statements, or who took steps that we didn't approve of, we would have a much more limited foreign policy. Indeed, we may not even have a leader of the opposition. Mr. Chairman, I welcome both petitions. I welcome this debate because we live in a democracy which respects freedom of expression. And when people make unacceptable statements, what we need to do is to use our capacity to expose their weaknesses and then ultimately defeat their arguments.
Air Carrick-in-Cumnock, the constituency that I am honoured to represent in this House, is a diverse bit of Scotland incorporating bustling towns, picturesque villages and rolling countryside. It's famous for its rugged coastline, stunning beaches and the birthplace, some 257 years ago next week, Scotland's national bird. It's also the home to one of the world's earliest and most enduringly successful purpose-built golf resorts. In 1902, golf designer Willie Fernie was commissioned by the 3rd Marquess of Ailsa to lay out a championship course at Turnberry, which has subsequently staged the Open Championships 4 times. Which brings me to why I'm speaking here today. Disappointingly, Turnberry has been dragged into this debate because the world-renowned course and resort that it sits in was bought by Donald Trump in 2014. It's undergoing a complete refurbishment as we speak. The Trump organisation is investing £200 million in the resort, and to date, the materials for the development have been sourced locally. They use local produce in the restaurants and employing some 200 local people, a figure set to rise when the hotel reopens this summer. In addition, Turnberry is expecting 300 contractors on site next month, many of them also local, all of them spending money in our local businesses and thus contributing to the local economy. This is a stark contrast to the Turnberry a few short years ago. Throughout the 1990s, the majority of staff were seasonal, and you'd have been hard-pushed to hear an Ayrshire accent among them. Now 80% of the staff are local. Under previous owners, food and drink for the resort's bar and restaurants were ordered through a company here in London. Now, local farmers are consulted in the menu development. Despite promises of investment, the previous owners, Dubai World, proposed closing the resort from October to Easter, as their failure to invest in the venue meant it was unsustainable as a year-round resort. Before Trump organisation came in, staff were worried it would shut down altogether. Now they're looking to employ between 350 and 400 people, the vast majority on full-time contracts, with part-time staff guaranteed hours and average 20 hours a week. In a constituency with youth unemployment rate above 5%, Trump Turnberry is home to 24 apprentices and will employ around 80 local 16 to 24-year-olds, many of whom will continue to progress their careers at the resort. I spent time at Turnberry last week and I spoke to staff, contractors and members, and there is no ambiguity about their feelings in this issue. They don't talk about Trump the politician, they don't talk about Trump the showman. They talk about a man with a passion for golf, with a commitment and a clear vision for the future for this resort. They talk of an organisation, a family-run business that consults with local people, that an ambitious plan for the future of the area had an ambition that was being backed up by action. I heard last week from a gentleman who has played at the course for 60 years, who talked of the respect that had been shown to the ordinary members, who talked about how lucky they were that this historic course had been left languishing for years, has now found an engaged benefactor. Donald Trump is a divisive character, and I have no intentions of standing here to defend the man. His comments on Chinese people, on Mexican immigrants, on women have been deplorable, and certainly don't mirror the type of politics we aspire to in Scotland. The man seems to out-Trump himself, no pun intended, each time he speaks in his bid to gain Republican nomination. And I am delighted that over 500,000 people here in the UK have chosen to call him out on their latest statements by standing up for our Muslim community and signing this petition. However, Air Carrick and Cumnock can't afford to spurn the investment of the Trump organisation because the head of the family business is spouting offensive right-wing rhetoric in an election campaign thousands of miles away. Trump's ability to run off at the mouth may well prove detrimental to his ambitions to host the Open, but being banned from the UK will ultimately be little more than a minor irritant for the man. 1 in 3 children in my constituency are growing up in poverty. Our beautiful landscapes are scarred by abandoned open-cast mines, and almost 14% of the working-age population are on out-of-work benefits. In the words of the club captain, if the Trump organisation pulls out of Turnberry because its head is locked out, it would be catastrophic for the resort and a tragedy for the local community. And whilst I agree with other sentiments in this debate, I feel my role here is to speak for my constituency. Mr Chairman, banning someone for wanting to ban others, in my view, is an inappropriate response. And perhaps it's not just Mr Trump who would benefit from reflecting on the words of Burns when he wrote to Luce, "Oh, what some power the gift to gie us to see ourselves as others see us. Thank you.
Philip Davis.
Find ourselves in the ridiculous position where some people are so outraged that Donald Trump has suggested that we should ban people simply because of their beliefs, that those people want to ban Donald Trump for his beliefs, which is a completely ridiculous situation. Now, across the pond, Donald Trump has been waging what might be described as a one-man campaign against political correctness for some time. And as someone who has had their own campaign against political correctness for some time here in this Parliament, nobody will be surprised to hear that I can relate to that. And in the race to become the next president, he's been gaining support with a political manner that can be described as blunt directness. He is definitely straight-talking, and as a Yorkshireman, I certainly applaud him for that too. In fact, I think in this country we could do with rather less political correctness and much more straight-talking across the board. And I think many of our constituents would agree. Now, we should be absolutely clear that today we're debating whether or not a man who has a chance of becoming the next president of the United States of America should be physically banned from entering the United Kingdom. By anyone's standards, that is a rather big thing. His offence, to warrant such a call, is to suggest a ban on incoming Muslims to America until, as he puts it, our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. Now, it's extremely clear that in the Western world we are experiencing very difficult and dangerous times. Violent attacks are becoming all too frequent inside free countries, perpetrated by those who seek to replace freedom with religious conformity. The sickening march of Islamic State is something that all right-thinking people are deeply worried about. And it's also clear that one path for terrorists and those who hate our way of life, of living in our Western countries, is to enter as immigrants and refugees. Now, determining what to do about that clear and worrying problem will obviously result in people having differing suggested solutions. Now, some people, and I may be so bold as to say that there will be some people in all of our constituents who will agree with Donald Trump's view, and some will disagree with Donald Trump's view. Now, as it happens, Sir David, I happen to disagree with Donald Trump's view. But whatever people think, surely he should be entitled to have this opinion and to express it, and to give all of those people who have that view a voice in the political process. Now, there was actually an opinion poll on this matter, Sir David, which actually showed that in the United Kingdom, 65% disagreed with Donald Trump and 24% agreed with him. And when that was actually moved into the north of the country, the people who agreed with Donald Trump went from 24% to 35%. Now, by anybody's standards, that is a significant body of the population. Now, lots of people in this room who are always talking about the rights of minorities seem very quiet all of a sudden when people who have a minority opinion have the nerve to express it. What about the rights of those minorities in this country? It's amazing that the people who always preach about tolerance and we shouldn't have any intolerance are always the very same people who are so intolerant of anybody who happens to have a different opinion to them. I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.